All emergency equipment off the Skyway Bridge. The Skyway Bridge is down. There's a Mayday emergency situation. Stop the traffic on that Skyway Bridge.
All stations, this is United States Coast Guard, St. Petersburg, Florida. The vessel, Some Adventure, 606 foot, has hit the Skyway Bridge. Any vessels in Tampa Bay area, Skyway vicinity, proceed and assist. There are reports of people in the water.
Each department Coast Guard, St. Petersburg. I'm dropping anchor on barge and we'll be ready for the bridge to assist. So get your pocket. I want to take you 41.
Coast Guard, St. Petersburg. Roger, have the name of your vessel again, please, over.
The Cub Dixie Progress. The Cub Dixie Progress.
Dixie Progress, Coast Guard, St. Petersburg. Roger, please advise me when you're on scene and the number of people you pick up out of the water. Some Adventure, Coast Guard, St. Petersburg. Did either span of the Skyway go down into the water, over?
Sir, the west span went down. The west span. The west span is down in the water.
Hello everyone. Do you ever wonder under what circumstances will the Coast Guard respond to a call? Does the Coast Guard charge a fee if they respond to a distress call? Do they charge for a non-emergency call? Do they have any discretion regarding whether to waive a fee? Think statistics. Provide some idea of how uncertain we are about our knowledge. Knowledge is incredibly important to process information to make informed decisions. When wealthy adventurers take huge risks, who should pay for rescue attempts? Who ultimately ends up paying for search and rescue or SAR operations depends on many factors. If it's the Coast Guard or the National Park Service NPS, then they pick up the bill. Or rather, the tax-paying citizens of the United States do. Neither agency has a policy for charging for SAR missions. The concept of billing outdoor enthusiasts who put themselves in harm's way is controversial, but on the national radar. The National Association for Search and Rescue, or NASAR, is made up of more than 10,000 volunteers, along with paid local, state, and national rescue professionals. Founded in 1973, the official position of the group is that billing for SR operations should be avoided, although it remains up to the local jurisdictions involved in the mission. SR missions are also built into the operating budget of the Coast Guard, and sometimes that includes extremely costly operations such as the Titan mission. There are many people who are going to say, why should the society spend money on the rescue effort if these people are wealthy enough to be able to engage in these risky activities? That question is gaining attention as very wealthy travelers in search of singular adventures spend big to scale peaks, sail across oceans, and blast off for space, follow the extended search for the Titan, a submersible that imploded during an expedition on 18th June 2023 to view the wreck of the Titanic in the North Atlantic Ocean off the coast of Newfoundland, Canada, not far from the Titanic. The Titanic wreck sits at more than 12,000 feet. Titan, previously called Cyclops II, was a submersible created and operated by American tourism, expeditions and underwater exploration company Ocean Gate. The operator charged passengers $250,000 each to participate in the voyage. Search and rescue efforts related to the Titan submersible cost the U.S. government an estimated $1.6 million, according to a defense budget expert. Why the Coast Guard doesn't charge for search and rescue operations, even in cases like the Titan submersibles and its ultra-wealthy passengers? Who pays for the bill if the United States Coast Guard, USCG, or Navy has to rescue you from the sea? The agency said, "We cannot attribute a monetary value to search and rescue cases, as the Coast Guard does not associate cost with saving a life." While the Coast Guard's cost for the mission is likely to run into the millions of dollars, it is generally prohibited by federal law from collecting reimbursement related to any search or rescue service. But that does not resolve the larger issue of whether wealthy travelers or companies should bear responsibility to the public and governments for exposing themselves to such risk. You can't help thinking about how the limited resources of rescuers can be utilized for such wealthy, thrill-seeking travelers. For rescue crews, however, the only concern is saving lives. The next few days will be critical. The objective of the Air Sea Rescue Organization was to first find the wrecked vessel or plane, to provide the survivors a means to remain on the surface of the water until help arrived, to provide food and water, and when required medical supplies, to keep survivors alive, and finally, to transport them safely ashore. The Coast Guard often receives calls from marinaires for non-distress assistance, but they generally will not provide assistance in non-distress cases if alternative assistance is available. Prior to about 30 years ago, the Coast Guard would often respond to even small calls for rescues, such as a boat that's run of out gas or had fishing net caught in its gear. These cases are usually referred to a commercial assistance towing company through a marine assistance request broadcast, issued by the Coast Guard on VHF Channel 16. The rules that discourage the rendering of assistance by the Coast Guard in non-distress situations are not absolute, and they may render assistance in those cases when no higher priority missions exist and no other capable resource is reasonably available. But in the late 80s and 90s, the Coast Guard stopped responding to simple requests like that close to shore. The thinking was that not only was the Coast Guard not needed in those scenarios, but they were also unfairly competing with commercial operations. As a result of that change in protocol, the Coast Guard was able to focus its time and money on SAR situations in which the agency's resources were actually needed, and private towing services were able to step in for the rest. How does the Coast Guard rescue a skipper whose boat is sinking? Do they charge you after? Under U.S. Code, the United States Coast Guard is responsible for maritime search and rescue, and in cases where injury or death could occur. The U.S. Coast Guard, the agency that was leading the search, they don't charge for search and rescue operations regardless of who needs saving. As for why wealthy individuals are not treated any differently when it comes to billing, doing so could cause some people to avoid or delay calling for a rescue when they actually need one, out of fear they won't be able to afford it. The U.S. Coast Guard is frugal in how it spends the taxpayers' dollars, and that cost-effectiveness is part of the agency's mindset. But that in a life-or-death situation, they do not want to deal with questions of who's paying. The dangers that can come with being at sea, including to the rescuers, and said that artificial delays caused by figuring out payment could cause a rescue effort to become riskier and less effective. Get the people or skipper off the vessel as safely as possible. If possible, dewater the vessel, fix the leak. The people are the primary concern. In more than 90% of search and rescues, Coast Guard ships or aircraft are on the scene within 2 hours, according to Coast Guard Performance Report. As an initial matter, most search and rescue costs are paid up front by the counties, states, and federal departments that employ rescue personnel and supply rescue equipment. The National Park Service says it spends almost $5 million each year on search and rescue SAR missions, not including the salaries of rangers assisting in the search. When does the state allow to bill rescued persons? However, several states have passed legislation. that allows them to bill the subjects of search and rescue operations in some cases. Many states have laws that allow the state to bill rescued persons. Generally, however, these only come into play if the person's recklessness or negligence led to need to be rescued. State agencies can oversee hundreds of rescue missions annually, and if an area falls out of federal or state jurisdiction, it's often up to counties and volunteers to fund the rescue effort. Although most of these costs are out of pocket for the agencies that conduct search and rescue, there are ways to recoup these costs. The Coast Guard has always had the ability to charge for the rescue of people vessel. One exception would be in the case where a person is found to have made a false distress call for a rescue. False Mayday is another one, declaring an engine problem when the vessel ran out of fuel, in which case they could potentially be criminally charged, sentenced to prison time, fined $250,000, and billed for the SAR operation. If the activity of the person was declared a manifestly unsafe voyage, and the person did it anyway and had to be rescued, they could be charged. Search and Rescue, SAR, is one of the Coast Guard's oldest missions, the Coast Guard says on its website, minimizing the loss of life, injury, property damage, or loss by rendering aid to persons in distress and property in the maritime environment has always been a Coast Guard priority. When the Coast Guard scrambles ships or aircraft, it's often to respond to a distressed vessel with a known location, often because people aboard can issue a call for help. The rescues are typically in near coastal areas. All coastal nations are required to respond to a Mayday call if a vessel is sailing in their jurisdiction and are signatories to the UN Law of the Seas Convention. In the event of an emergency aboard a fishing vessel, the United States Coast Guard may be the difference between life and death for the injured person. Proper preparation for their arrival can help to facilitate the rescue effort and save precious time. What Channel 16 is for: how to make an effective call should an emergency occur. Channel 16 VHF 156.8 MHz is a marine VHF radio frequency designated as an international distress frequency. Primarily intended for distress, urgency, and safety priority calls, the frequency may also carry routine calls used to establish communication before switching to another working channel. What helicopter does the US Coast Guard use? The Sikorsky MH-60 Jayhawk is a multi-mission, twin-engine, medium-range helicopter operated by the United States Coast Guard for search and rescue, law enforcement, military readiness, and marine environmental protection missions. It was originally designated HH-60J before being upgraded and redesignated in 2007. Jayhawk stands for perseverance, dedication, and the will to succeed. It also exemplifies the men and women of the Coast Guard today. Why does the Coast Guard use Dolphin helicopters? US Coast Guard MH-65 Dolphin Helicopters. The Dolphin boasts a Fenestron anti-torque tail rotor. It is certified for operation in all weather and nighttime operations, with the exception of icing conditions. The MH-65 helicopter, built by Eurocopter America, is the US Coast Guard's primary rescue helicopter, used aboard certified cutters during deployments. The H-65 helicopter, the Coast Guard's most ubiquitous aircraft. There are 100 H-65s in the inventory. The H-65 is known for its Fenestron tail rotor and its autopilot capabilities, which can complete an unaided approach to the water and bring the aircraft into a stable 15-meter hover or automatically fly search patterns, an ability which allows the crew to engage in other tasks. Helicopter assistance and pickup. Helicopter rescues are used both when rescuing severely injured people and if the entire crew must be rescued from the vessel or lifeboats and life rafts. There are various signals for communication between the helicopter and the people in distress, but no general standards are applied throughout the world. The signals to be used are therefore agreed as far as possible over the VHF radio before the operation starts. When it is possible, the helicopter crew will often send a rescuer down to the people in distress, and he or she will then be responsible for communication. The pilot will always overfly the yacht or the area to ensure that conditions are in order before the operation starts. When evacuating persons from their vessel, a significant risk for the helicopter is masts, rigging, or other impediments. Additional risks will arise if the boat is rolling and pitching. The rotor blade downwash from a helicopter reaches hurricane force speeds. Any loose object on deck can fly into you, your crew, or damage the helicopter. A helicopter needs an enormous amount of power to hover, so by keeping a steady course, the helicopter can gain more airspeed and therefore use less power. It is harder to see the bow on smaller craft and therefore difficult for the pilot to format. This means that the pilot cannot lock onto a steady course and speed, which is why smaller craft are asked to remain stationary. During its flight, the helicopter builds up a static electric charge, and anyone who reaches up to take hold of the guideline will get a shock. The guideline must never be fixed on board the yacht. A helicopter harness is the most widely used means for evacuating a person from the sea, survival craft, or vessel. The sling is suited for quickly picking up uninjured persons, but are unsuitable for persons with injuries. The winch operator on the helicopter will send down a harness or stretcher to the deck by using a guideline. Always allow the rescue device to touch the deck before handling it. When the entire crew is rescued from a raft, you should contact the helicopter crew before you release the air from the roof of the raft. The helicopter might not be able to accommodate all persons at the same time, so the raft must continue to protect the remaining persons until all crew members have been rescued. Masts, antennas, and such equipment should be taken down when persons are about to be rescued from lifeboats. If you have been involved in an air-sea rescue before, never assume that you know what is going to happen the next time. Every air-sea rescue varies. The weather conditions or sea state will be different, the condition of the boat or the casualty, for example. So it is really important to listen very carefully to this brief, make notes if possible, especially as when the helicopter arrives you will find it hard to hear anything. Before the helicopter arrives, prepare your boat for its arrival and secure all loose items so that they do not get blown away by the helicopter's downdraft. Why will the size of my boat be important? When the winch operator makes contact with you, he or she will ascertain the size of your boat. A smaller craft, approximately 7 meters and under, is usually attended with the boat stationary and the helicopter hovering overhead. Larger craft, 9-10 meters and above, will be given a course and speed to steer. The helicopter pilot will then keep station, normally on the port quarter, on the moving vessel. It is important to keep to this course without deviating. The winchman will lower a weighted line down to your boat. Let it earth on the deck. To release any static, do not attach it to the boat. Coiling the line in a bucket is very useful. You will be asked to pull on the line to guide the helicopter winchman in. Do exactly what they tell you. They are the experts. If a casualty needs to be removed from the boat, the winchman will take the casualty off the boat first. You will use the weighted line to control his swing. Do not let it snag on anything. All Coast Guard winchmen are fully trained paramedics and are able to provide medical assistance at the time of the rescue. However, you shouldn't be afraid to administer CPR if someone collapses on board. Every minute counts, and the more you can do prior to our arrival, the better for the casualty. If you have specific perspective, thoughts, and relevant experience around topics like survival, volunteering, support, technical rescue, maritime operations, or navigation that you believe can motivate people to act a good way, then you are welcome to share and discuss your story with others. Please feel free to leave your response in the comments section below, because we would love to hear how things are going with you too, a bit about your life journey. We respect for the diversity of opinions. Inappropriate or offensive language, personal attacks or threatening will be removed immediately. I appreciate your time and energy watching this video. Never stop learning and share knowledge. Stay connected to this channel. Thank you for watching. Goodbye and see you